ever heard of a Baroque composer using cyclic form? Vivaldi did. I have RV 176, and that's not the only great thing about it. It's a violin concerto in C major, a relatively early one, and it's a masterclass in rhythmic momentum, in harmony, and how to use trills as more than just decoration. Oh, and do be cautious when viewing the sheet music in this video. I was only able to find sheet music which added some articulations like slurs, but they are in parentheses when Vivaldi himself didn't write them. So just be aware that that's probably not how he would have actually had it played when you see something in parentheses. Thank you. So how it begins, you get this quarter note theme in the first violins, and the basso continuo and the viola are playing this sort of bouncy figure where it just leaps between octaves, and it gives it an open quality, but it very quickly gives way to these 16th note figures, lending the piece more momentum. I'm going to call this particular pattern, I'm not sure if it actually has a name because it's quite a common Baroque pattern, but I'm going to call it the anchored dip. So basically the second violins are sort of copying the first violins here in 6 3/3, but notice how it doesn't go along with that tail end 16th note figure that the first violins have, but they do line up more of the violins after the trill figures. Notice how he uses the anchored dip again, this time in the violins. It's a very clever way to preserve the momentum while using previous material, and how the viola plays 16th notes to preserve that momentum when the violins play 8th notes. In early Vivaldi, that sense of constant momentum is really important to the music. The violins also split briefly, and then the orchestral unison using the anchored dip is restored, and truly in unison. So after that, the viola continues conserving the momentum by continuing to play 8th notes even though the rest of the orchestra has come to a stop, which prevents the music from becoming stagnant. We get this syncopated figure in the violins in the parallel minor. Also notice that when the viola was conserving the momentum, we landed on the dominant, which also helps prevent it from feeling like we came to a full stop. Now in this sequence, I want to take a look at how the accompaniment is sort of built around the bar lines, which keeps us from fully landing on our feet, even though the accompaniment is slowed. So eventually the ritornello ends with these wide arpeggio figures, and what you get is the soloist repeating some of the material from the beginning, but also developing it, and then continuing with the rising sequence. Notice how the trills have become a central theme that will become very important as we go on. Now, the anchored dip is mixed in with the main theme in the solo, the anchored dip being in the accompaniment, and during the baroulage, notice how the accompaniment rhythm is based on the second violins at the beginning of the piece. Vivaldi ends the second ritornello with the syncopated chromatic figures, and the solo is based on previous 16th note material and is cut off by the orchestra, mocking the soloist's previous development of other material. So here we're kind of seeing that the concerto in this piece in particular is a battle between the orchestra and the soloist. And I want you to remember that because it becomes important later as well. The mockery continues, and the orchestra does this strange exotic sounding bit where the median is raised to make way for the raised subdominant, sort of implying that we might be modulating to the dominant key, right? But what happens is he doesn't modulate to the dominant key, and he stays in E minor, returns to the G natural, and this rapid switch between G natural and G sharp kind of tricks our ears and makes us feel like we're kind of just rapidly going major, minor. And it's a really interesting color, and it adds to that sort of mockery that the orchestra is doing with the soloist. You get the first solo without any accompaniment, so that makes the barrelage way more intense. And just like the orchestra, you get a sudden switch to the major, almost like the violin is mocking the orchestra's mockery of itself. Now come the end of the next ritornello, you get a full pause for the first time in the piece. And then you get like that interjection, like solo recalled again, and the orchestra quickly regains control. Again, it's like a battle of sorts. And after recalling the syncopated section, you get these rising fragments from those trill figures in that sequence that appeared kind of in the middle of the ritornello. And the anchor dip then is laid under the trills from the sequence. And then the syncopated viola kind of keeps us on our feet. And the first violins add in those wide arpeggios that are supposed to come at the end of the ritornello and mixes it in with everything else. It's an amazing opening movement, and one filled with conflict between the orchestra and the soloist. But then we get to the second movement, and you get this heart-wrenching saraband-like character. The violins leap down a tenth. It's heartbreaking. You get this appoggiatura, and it just tears everything out of you. And then when the soloist enters, it no longer feels like a battle. It's like the soloist is joining the orchestra in mourning. It kind of just descends down in these eighth note patterns that start off B, and because of that, it becomes breathless. And it's clear it's no longer a battle. They're mourning together after the fight. Notice it's like the violin is begging for forgiveness. But anyways, you finally reach this on-beat low G in the violin, and it is so sad. Like the soloist has just dropped onto their knees and has finally let out those tears, reminding us that this battle had consequences. Then you get these triplets, you get trills again, so trills have become a theme across the movements. And you get this passionate leap up to a C with a suspension. This movement is just so tragic. But anyways, you get double stops in the soloist, but this time in a major key, and it makes it sound simultaneously heavier but also happier. You reach double stops again, but this time in the minor, and it really hurts. And the accompaniment then finally takes some pauses, because up until this point it has just been quarter note, quarter note, quarter note in 3/4. But giving the soloist this space to like let out those mournful phrases, it's almost like the orchestra is saying, it's okay, we forgive you, in a way. And of course, I have no idea if that's what Vivaldi actually intended when he wrote this piece, but to me, that's the sort of emotion that I get from it. The movement ends with the deceptive cadence, A flat in the bass line, and then it lowers itself, and that's the end. But the third movement, luckily for us, is celebratory in 3/8 time, so it's quite dance-like, and you get more trills. Who would have guessed? You still get these little minor key sections to contrast with the major, and then you get this sort of like dominant flavored F sharp section, but we don't actually modulate to G major, and the F sharp soon turns back to F natural. But here, Vivaldi is really playing with switching between faster and slower sections, as well as a major and minor, because once again we get to minor. At the end of the solo, you get these 16th note triplet figures. That becomes important pretty quickly. So it's reused in the following ritornello to break up the momentum built from the suspensions, and then that is interspersed with these 8th note figures based on the viola from the end of the first ritornello. So this time, though, it appears in the violins. Now, you get more trills with rising chromaticism, and the soloist also joins in on the rising trills in the following solo. Now, at this point, we ask ourselves, what's with all the new material in the ritornelli? It's kind of weird for Vivaldi. He doesn't usually do that. Instead, he usually prefers to fragment old ritornello material and develop it. But the new material in the ritornelli isn't really new material, because notice how they all have a lot of trills. So this is one of the earliest examples of a piece with cyclic form. He's using the trills as a recurring theme throughout each movement. And that's how he justifies introducing this quote-unquote new material. It's not really new if you look at the whole piece in context. So once again, Vivaldi proves he's an incredibly forward-thinking composer. Let me know what you think about this piece. It's not well known at all, and it's really sad because I think it's one of his earliest masterpieces.